Ah, Josh Anderson is a Montreal Canadian filling a need that we have been desperate to acquire and get into our NHL roster for a long time. I've been a Josh Anderson fan for a couple years now. It's unfortunate that he's dealt with some injury problems, but I love the player and I suspect he will become a fan favorite in Montreal very quickly. Now let's get into this trade because as hyped as I am to get Josh Anderson into our roster, I am quite disappointed to see Max Domi heading out the door. So first and foremost, I want to quickly say I have the utmost respect for what Max Domi brought to our team in the last couple years, especially what he was doing off the ice. He's a character guy, great attitude, always took time out of his day to spend time with fans, especially the younger fans and fans who also have type 1 diabetes like Domi himself. So I have the utmost respect for him. And really gonna miss him on the Montreal Canadiens. He has a great highlight reel package in just the 2 years that he was with us, specifically from his first season where he absolutely lit the lamp on a regular basis. I think Columbus is going to be very happy with the return that they got from the Montreal Canadiens. Now, let's get into this. First, I'll talk about Josh Anderson, and he's the guy that the Habs have recently acquired. He is a big right-handed right winger. This type of player is very hard to acquire and aren't available that often in the trade market, and they're highly sought after in free agency, and you usually have to overpay for them. So unless you're drafting them, they're typically very hard to come by. He's a power forward and he utilizes his size. He's got the intimidation factor. He's listed at 6'3", 222 pounds. He's a big guy, and despite being that big, he is a fast skater. Very quick on his feet, great on the rush, but also really good in the offensive zone, along the boards, gathering pucks, and just crushing guys. And he will drop the gloves and handle his own, no problem. He is cut from the same cloth as Tom Wilson. Maybe a little bit less fighting, less pims up on the board for Josh Anderson, but he can hold his own in a Tilly. Let me tell you, he's got fights against Jamie Benn, Zdeno Chara, as well as Tom Wilson himself, and he's handled his own quite well. Now, in terms of his offensive capability, he is a goal scorer, and he scores goals in numerous different ways. He's got the shot. He gets into scoring areas, including the dirty areas. He's a great net front presence for tips. That'll be very good on the power play. Really take some of the load off of Brendan Gallagher on that first power play unit, playing against all the top penalty killers. Josh Anderson can take a big role there, put Gallagher down on that second power play unit. That will be an underrated move to really help the Montreal Canadiens power play. So as a 22-year-old in 2016-17, he had 17 goals, 12 assists, and 29 points. Then in 2017-18, just 23 years old, 19 goals, but in just 63 games. So you got to think he would have finished somewhere around 25 or so, maybe a little more, as a 23-year-old. And then he followed that up in 2018-19 with 27 goals and added to his assist totals with 20, getting up to 47 points in a full 82-game season. Now, I know people want to focus on his point production, but that's not what you focus on with a player like Josh Anderson and the way he plays. He is a goal scorer, and so you really have to focus on that goal scoring line from him. And then when he's not scoring goals, he offers so much more out there on the ice. He's a great 5-on-5 player, plus all the things I've already mentioned with the intimidation factor, how he uses his size, lays the body, and he can absolutely run over a guy and then score a goal. This is exactly what we've needed on the right side of our forward group, especially where he's a right-handed shot, something the Habs have been lacking significantly the last few years, especially since we traded away Andrew Shaw. Now, it has to be mentioned, though, he's dealt with a significant injury this recent season, a left shoulder injury, and he only put up a goal and 3 assists in 26 games played in this most recent season. But You know, a lot of people want to focus on that too, but if you're going to judge this type of player on that one season where he was clearly playing injured and not his typical self, I think that's, no offense, not trying to offend anybody, but that's very naive and not how you judge a trade. He is a very special player, and there's not many players like this in the league anymore who play this old school power forward type of hockey. He'll be very valuable for us in the playoffs. Now, he did have shoulder surgery to repair that shoulder. Yes, this injury is a risk that we're taking on, and we have to hope that he rebounds and gets back to the form that he had before the injury. Now, a lot of people are worried about this, that he might re-injure it or he might not be the same player. I want to point you to a very good post on our Habs, the subreddit, where someone who clearly has experience as a doctor, if I'm not mistaken, breaks down why this specific type of injury that Josh Anderson had to his left shoulder, a labrum tear, should not hinder the rest of his NHL career, and that he should rebound just fine. So check out that post on our Habs. And I also want to mention that I'm not even sure he would have been available on the market if it wasn't for a bit of a tarnished relationship between Josh Anderson and the Columbus Blue Jackets, because he has been progressing and developing very well. I do not see why you'd want to trade a guy like Josh Anderson, who is a restricted free agent at this young of an age, entering his prime. But a few years ago, some issues with the contract negotiations in his when he was first in RFA, coming out of his entry-level deal. Didn't quite sit well with Josh Anderson there. Then, when he had that shoulder injury, he wasn't 100%. Word is he wanted to sit out, but Columbus did not want him to do that. So, in a way, maybe not forced him to play, but kind of pushed him in that way to play through an injury, when the smarter choice would have been to have that surgery, miss a good portion of the beginning of the season, and then be ready for the later stages. But he played, he wasn't himself, and then he eventually needed that surgery anyway. He's got it. He's back to 100%. He would have played in round 2 of the playoffs if Columbus would have advanced. Columbus's general manager has stated this. So he's already 100%. He has an additional 2 to 3 months until the next NHL season starts around January to continue healing, working out, getting physically ready for his debut with the Montreal Canadiens. I am psyched for this addition. He was heavily involved and a big reason why Columbus was able to knock out Tampa Bay in that playoff round last year. Grant McKegg, who was a former Habs scout, spoke to another scout, not sure who that was, but this scout says he's a very effective power forward, and Steve Yzerman told this scout that Tampa just did not have an answer for Josh Anderson. So I'm sure there's a few players on Tampa Bay, our direct competition in our division, who just won the Stanley Cup, who aren't that thrilled that Josh Anderson is now a Montreal Canadien. Now, Columbus is getting Max Domi as well as a 3rd-round pick. So that's something else people are focusing on, that we are the ones that actually had to add to this trade to get a winger. Domi, who is, in my eyes, honestly, I do believe Domi has potential to be a center. Maybe not the, ideal number 2 center on your team who is strong in all areas of the game, but I do think he's capable to put up significant offensive numbers at the center position. So I can see why people are a little upset why we were the ones who had to add a pick to this deal. But the thing is, numerous teams were interested in Josh Anderson because that type of player is so rare. It's likely there was some sort of bidding war, and if Bergevin had to add a 3rd-round pick, something we have no shortage of right now, picks, to finalize this deal and finally fill that need, goal-scoring power forward on the right side, I think is a no-brainer. We've got 3 picks in the 2nd round, 3 picks in the 4th round, so that area of the draft is already solidified for the Montreal Canadiens. I have no problem giving up that round 3 pick to to finalize this deal. To me, essentially, on the Habs side of it, this is a one-for-one deal. However, for the Columbus side of it, I can see how they would really value that third overall pick, where they are not swimming in picks like the Montreal Canadiens are. Now, Max Domi. He's a playmaker first. In 2015-16, in his rookie year, 18 goals, 34 assists for 52 points. That's a very impressive rookie season, comparing that to what Nick Suzuki just did, playing mostly right wing for the Montreal Canadiens. I think he was on pace for around 45 or 47 points, something like that. Well, in Max Domi's rookie year, 18 goals, 34 assists, 52 points. Fantastic year. However, he followed that up with some struggles in Arizona the next 2 years. But then when we acquired him for Alex Galchenyuk, he came into Montreal on a mission and he killed it. 28 goals, 44 assists for 72 points. A lot of people said he benefited from a higher than average shooting percentage. That may be true. However, at such a young age, it's hard to really base what his average shooting percentage really should be. I don't think it's a fluke that he was able to put up 28 goals. As long as he's got some good line mates in Columbus, specifically to be able to play with a power forward who can gather pucks for him in the corners, he will thrive. He's typically a finesse player. He does play with some grit and some attitude. I think Columbus will love his personality and what he does out there on the ice. A lot of energy from Max Domi, but he's not a guy who gets into the corners and retrieve pucks that well. More of a finesse player, a playmaker first. He really loves the sauce pass. He likes going back to his defenseman on the drop pass. And he's also got a very hard shot. The issue with Max Domi is his accuracy with both his passing and his shooting tends to lack here and there. So look out for that in Columbus, but regardless, I think he fills a need for Columbus as well. Personally, I think this is a great trade for both teams. Max Domi did kind of struggle this year with the Montreal Canadiens. They really tried him again at center for a good portion of the year. He didn't seem to have the same type of energy, but at the same time, he lost his line mate in Drouin early in the season, and then Domi kind of bounced throughout our lineup and then played fourth line for us in the playoffs and couldn't really quite get it going even once he joined our top six. He had one game where he had 3 assists. He's known for having a few multi-point games. When he's on, but when he's off, nothing is really going on. He's got some consistency issues. If he can figure that out, he's going to be a superstar offensive player in the NHL. Now, both these players are restricted free agents, so the focus for both teams now moves to locking these players up, likely long term. I'd love to see Anderson get locked up long term. I do not want to see him leave the Montreal Canadiens in a couple years, 2 to 3 years, if specifically because we gave up such a valuable asset in Max Domi. And I was really hoping Max Domi would be a Hab for a long time. I loved having that kind of troll factor with the Leafs, that a legendary Leafs son was on the Montreal Canadiens, and I just love that factor. And I was a huge fan of Max Domi. And I think that's my bias leaking in as to why I did not want to trade him and would have preferred giving up that first round pick and some sort of package for Anderson. But that's not what Columbus wanted. They wanted Max Domi. We needed the right winger. So you gotta give to get if you're getting a good player. And it goes both ways. I think both teams got a very good player in this deal. Now, I know a lot of people were hung up on the Canadiens offering a massive package for Patrik Laine, an elite goal scorer. However, this trade for Josh Anderson and not having to give up our first round pick and Cole Caulfield is likely the more responsible way to build the team, where you're not depleting the cupboards of prospects and roster players just for one asset in Patrik Laine. Now, we got to lock him up. He's a restricted free agent. He needs a new contract, same as Domi with Columbus. I would suspect that Domi will end up getting paid more because he is able to play center and he does have a 72-point season under his belt. I'm not sure what that'll look like. I was thinking around anywhere between 5.5 to 6 with the Montreal Canadiens. That's probably where they wanted him to fit in. I'm not sure if the negotiations didn't go so well with Max Domi and the Habs. Maybe that could be another reason why we are looking to trade him. But maybe that's around where he'll land in Columbus. Now, I would suspect that Josh Anderson for the Habs would fall maybe somewhere around there, but probably a little less, where his point totals aren't so high, but his goal totals are. They'll probably end up on similar contracts, maybe with Josh Anderson getting slightly less, especially where he is coming back from that injury. If he wants a long-term deal, he'll have to take some of the cap hit will have to come down a little bit. And like I said, I don't want to see him leave as an unrestricted free agent in a couple of years, so I'm really hoping the Habs can work out a very good deal mid to long term for Josh Anderson. Now, another positive about this trade, it's very likely Danault staying a Montreal Canadien. I did some rumor videos, and I didn't even bring up Danault in a lot of the rumors, just because I never saw Marc Bergevin trading him. He's starting to get mentioned in Selke talks. That's not a guy you trade. You're likely immediately losing that trade if you get rid of a player like that. Danault consistently keeps getting better every year, and I don't see that stopping in the next year or two. At some point, he will plateau, but he's continued to improve. I'd love to see Danault locked up long term, and with this trade, I think that's even more likely. So I'd expect to see a Danault extension announced sooner rather than later, same as Brendan Gallagher. And where we might be saving some money on Max Domi not being signed to a contract, that helps us with the raises Gallagher and Danault are going to get, as well as Galchenyuk in the very near future. That's about it, guys. Feel like I covered it all here. I hope I didn't forget anything. Let me know what you think about this trade down in the comments. I cannot wait to see Josh Anderson out there in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. I think this trade really balances out Montreal's forward core. We had a surplus of left-handed left wingers and centers. Domi wasn't really going to progress to a point where he'd take over Suzuki or Kotkaniemi or Danault. So I really think this trade balances out our forward group, and it makes our team very, very tough to play against, as if we weren't already, with how big and strong our defense is and how good our center depth is starting to look. It's an exciting time to be a Habs fan. The best years of this team are ahead of us. Let me know what you think about this trade down in the comments. And if you like this video, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Scotian Canadian. Cheers, guys. Go Habs, go, baby. Woo! Don't mind me. Just trying to fill out this Habs polo. Get on Bergevin's level. Maybe catch an invitation to the bicep club.